The time now just approaching 20 minutes past 8. Now, NHS England has published new guidelines aimed at making care for patients with suicidal thoughts feel more supported. It also says mental health practitioners should engage with patients' family and friends to better understand their social situation.
Now, in the UK, 17 people die by suicide each day.
On average, 5 of them would have been in contact with mental health services, and 4 of those, about 80%, would have been assessed as low or no risk at their last contact with a practitioner.
So the new Staying Safe from Suicide guidance will see reforms to the way risk of suicide and self-harm are assessed, with NHS England deeming the current methods unreliable due to how quickly suicidal thoughts can change.
Well, instead, they're calling for a more person-centred approach. It would focus on each individual's situation and managing their safety.
NHS England say this guidance should be adopted across the board by public, private and voluntary sector providers, including independent practitioners.
Well, we're joined now by Pirie, who's the co-author of the guidance, whose son Tom took his own life in 2020. And also with us, Dr. John van Niekerk from the Royal College of Psychiatrists. Good morning to both. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning.
Philip, good morning. Let me start with you and just talk to us, first of all, about Tom and the help that he was getting when he took his life.
Yeah, Tom was a very friendly person. He was friendly, he was outgoing, he was confident, he was determined, he was a strong character. He loved sport, he loved football especially. He did well at school and at university academically. He could speak 3 languages fluently. And he wanted to do some good in the world, which is why he wanted to be a teacher. And just to say that, I think on that he brought an enormous amount of joy to all those who loved him.
He was being supported at the time that he killed himself. He was receiving some counselling.
Yes.
But to your knowledge, was there any awareness at all that he was at the point whereby he could really do himself serious harm?
No, I don't think there was any awareness. We were aware that he was having some difficult mental health problems. We had no idea how serious they were. And I think he basically received the wrong kind of care. And that's why I started my campaign to reform the system of suicide risk assessment.
Just how hard is it, do you think, and we'll ask John this in just a moment, to make that assessment, to be able to kind of really understand how vulnerable an individual is at that point?
Yeah, it's not easy, but what we're saying in the guidance is that it's very important to take a personal and collaborative approach. This is not a place for checklists. Checklists get in the way of the practitioner developing that really important therapeutic relationship with the person. So really the focus needs to be on the practitioner. I mean, I talk about practitioner, that covers counsellors, psychotherapists, mental health practitioners. It's across the board, right? So this guidance is not just for NHS practitioners, but it's also for private sector and also charity sector practitioners. That's the first time this has been done. So I think that's going to be a big step forward. So we're saying personal and collaborative. Think about the person in front of you who's another human being who's probably suffering enormous mental distress, and it's been probably a very big decision for them to come and sit in front of you, you know. So for you to be able to help them, you've got to encourage them to open up, which means really building a relationship of trust and confidence. Speak person to person, not on a checklist.
Dr. John, let us ask you exactly that. You know, how significant a shift is this, that it moves away from being purely a risk assessment exercise towards, as we were hearing there, something that is personally tailored to the individual?
Yes, it's a huge shift, and places the assessment places the value of the human relationship between the practitioner and the individual that's being assessed, and it takes us away from in the past, which we know hasn't worked, and we've known this for some time. And NHS, nice guidance have been there that we should move away from these tick box assessments and move towards collaborative assessments that focuses on the individual, on the personal individual, and then use that relationship to tailor safety plans that are co-produced with the individual and their family, the people that care about them, to actually move things forward towards safety. But it is a huge challenge, and it will require a lot of training, supervision, protected time to embed this approach safely. And what is so beautiful about this guidance is it's brought people from right across the system, those with lived experience, the academics, the experts, the frontline clinicians, to create guidance that has truly been co-produced. And it's been a real privilege to work with Philip and NHS England and other leaders on this work.
You use the word or the phrase safety plan, that you would be able to work up a safety plan with the individual. What is that and how would it work?
So the safety plan is where we focus on those things that are individual to that particular person, as Philip has said, that person in front of you. So it moves away from focusing on the tick box on whether you are low, medium, or high risk, and actually look on those factors that will keep the person safe. And that is very unique and personalized to each individual and to the family that support them. And it's really then moving the language changes as well from risk to actually safety, and then it can instill hope. We know from research then when people are involved in their care plans and they can shape them, then they own them much more. There's much more compliance with, for instance, medication or therapy, when it's actually something that they've had a say in, and they own that with the family much more. And that's what will make care safer. And what I think this guidance will do, and if properly implemented, and we've seen it in a few trusts already where they have taken this forward, where they've moved away from the risk stratification. They've co-produced that safety care plan. They have put the reflective supervision and training in, that the care that they're getting at the end of that is so much better.
I guess, Philip, you really believe then lives could be saved if this is universally adopted, this new strategy. But the other thing that really strikes me from this conversation is that of those 17 people who take their own lives every day, the vast majority are not even accessing mental health services. And that is a gap that also needs to be addressed and
absolutely
narrowed.
Yeah, it's very, very, very important. Can I just add something to what John said, which is that the whole idea of trying to predict suicide is completely flawed. That we know that attempts to predict suicide are wrong more than 95% of the time, right? So that's something which should be stopped, right? And concentrate on the personal and collaborative approach. Yeah, I mean, back to the question, absolutely, 1754 you were talking about, so it's only 5 are in contact with mental health services. That means that 12 are not in contact with mental health services. The large majority of those 12 are men. At least 3 times more men than women take their own lives. And I think that is basically because men very often think that seeking help is a sign of weakness or failure, right? So they're most affected by the so-called stigma of suicide. So we've really got to try and break down that stigma, so that more of those 12 seek help, and that when they get help, they get the right kind of help.
I wanted to ask that. It is young men, particularly, that are facing this challenge.
It is. It's a big challenge. Suicide is the biggest killer of young people in this country. It's a terrible scourge on society.
How do we change that? How do we improve that dialogue and, as you say, change that stigma?
Well, I think changing the stigma is a question of public awareness. And one of the things I'm asking the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, for is a meeting, because I want to talk to him about reducing the rate of suicide and saving lives. I very much hope I'll be able to talk to him soon about that.
Well, it's admirable work you're doing. Thank you very much for coming to talk to us, Philip. We really appreciate your time.
I don't want Tom's death to have been in vain.
Fully understand that. Thank you.
Good to talk to you this morning. Thank you for being here.
It is 29 minutes past 8, and we're going to talk now about a week-long celebration of Scottish heritage,